Hello, I'm Donald Ashley, the Director of the Office of Compliance at the FDA Center for Drug Evaluation and Research. Our office consists of over 400 doctors, lawyers, pharmacists, scientists, and safety officers who work together tirelessly to shield patients and consumers from poor quality, unsafe, and ineffective drugs through proactive compliance strategies and risk-based enforcement action. One of the programs we specifically administer for the FDA is the Drug Registration and Listing System. And ensuring accurate and up-to-date registration and listing information is a critical part of our efforts to protect patient health. I want to welcome you to today's workshop. I'm encouraged to see so many of you logging in to engage with us from across the US and from many different countries around the world. It truly shows the global reach of the drug industry and your commitment to quality drug registration and listing submissions. One of our strategic goals at the Office of Compliance is to proactively promote compliance through clear communication with our industry stakeholders. Because improved stakeholder understanding and increased voluntary compliance with regulatory requirements have a substantial and direct impact on patient health. And that's our aim here today. So we'll be explaining the registration and listing requirements in plain language and providing you all the tools and resources you'll need to create high-quality registration and listing submissions. Most significantly, you'll have the opportunity to ask questions, share any sticking points you may be experiencing, and learn the step-by-step technical details you'll need to be successful. In fact, everyone logged in today can take advantage of this unique once-a-year opportunity to ask questions directly to the FDA registration and listing subject matter experts, and to interact with them on our exclusive 2021 case studies focused on the latest emerging registration and listing issues. As you may know, Paul Loebach serves as the director of our drug registration and listing team. And as I work with Paul and his staff, I'm consistently impressed with the depth and breadth of their knowledge. And I'm very glad they're opening their doors to take this time to be available to you. Paul's also made all the workshop presentations today available so you can take the materials back to your office and share them with your colleagues. That way, you can all more successfully navigate FDA systems. Drug registration and listing may seem like a routine administrative task, and people often don't appreciate its importance and the significant downstream impacts of the data. In fact, collecting this data is fundamental to FDA's mission to protect the public health. We analyze the data and routinely use it to help facilitate inspections, recalls, our response to outbreaks and other serious incidents, and to communicate with industry. Externally, the data is also regularly relied upon by other federal agencies, such as the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, the Center for Disease Control, the National Libraries of Medicine, the Department of Defense, and the Veteran Affairs health systems. It's also used by hospitals, clinics, and pharmacies for dispensing medications, as well as the distribution and inventory of drug products. The daily publication of this data ensures that anyone can quickly and easily determine a drug product's approval status and download its labeling. Drug registration and listing not only provides important information about products, it also helps enable the delivery of essential medications to patients. Your attendance here today shows that you know and appreciate the value of submitting complete, accurate, and compliant registration and listing submissions. And at the conclusion of this workshop, we trust you'll have gained the requisite knowledge to make the registration and listing process a smooth and successful experience. Thank you again for attending today.
Thank you very much, Don. We do appreciate your time and your encouraging remarks. And now for our keynote speaker, it is my extreme great pleasure to introduce Paul Loebach, who serves as Chief of the Drug Registration and Listing Branch and has headed up that office for more than 11 years. It's always such a pleasure to work with Paul and his team. There's so much enthusiasm in there. He has 30 years of experience with FDA in data management, analysis, and programming, as well as regulatory surveillance and enforcement. Please join me in welcoming Paul Loebach.
Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where in the world you are watching us. My name is Paul Loebach, and I am the branch chief for the Drug Registration and Listing branch. I have the pleasure of welcoming you to this webinar and leading off this day of presentations. There have been a lot of changes and updates to our office and the registration and listing program since our last workshop. So I'd like to take this opportunity to go over what's new and highlight some of the things that might affect your registration and listing submissions and obligations. As a quick overview, I'll first talk about a big reorganization that our office went through this year. I'll then give you some statistics from the registration and listing data that I think you might find interesting. I'll discuss 2 new marketing categories we've created this year. I'll then touch upon OMUFA, OTC monograph reform, and the future of the NDC, and I'll end with a review of today's agenda. To begin with, the Drug Registration and Listing Office has a new home and a slightly new name. We used to be located in the Office of Regulatory and Program Operations as a staff-level unit. As such, we kept our long-standing acronym of DRLS, or DRLS. As of January 2021, however, we are now located in the Office of Unapproved Drugs and Labeling Compliance in the Division of Labeling, Registration, and Unapproved Drugs. We are also now considered a branch-level unit. As such, our abbreviation has changed to DRLB. Now, we haven't really settled on how to pronounce this acronym, so if you still want to call us DRLS, we won't mind. Now, an interesting look at the registration and listing data over the past year. The first graph shows the number of new establishment registrations by month. As you can see, and as we reported in last year's workshop, we encountered an enormous spike in new registrations in 2020 as the pandemic hit. A large portion of this surge were new hand sanitizer manufacturers. Although the number trended downward for the rest of the year and into this year, we only recently reached pre-pandemic levels of new registration activity. As you can see here, we had a similar history for new product listings. The big spike we had in 2020 eventually ebbed back down to normal levels earlier this year. And the same for new labeler codes assigned. In all, for 2020, the DRLS branch assigned more than 7,000 new labeler codes. This graph shows a slightly different cross-section of the data than what many people often view. From the Ndc Directory on October 1st of this year, we have a breakdown of Ndc package codes by marketing category. Generally, people often report such a breakdown by Ndc product code, but some types of products tend to have more package-sized presentations than others. A count of product codes by category would show that ANDAs and OTC monograph products are usually the most prevalent products on the market anyway. However, when you count the available package presentations, that weighting pushes the prevalence of these categories to 78% of all listed package presentations for finished drugs. Finally, I wanted to show this graph because it not only explains why we hold this workshop each year, but why it's best to hold it in the beginning of October each year. As you can see, CDER Direct is used thousands of times a month for registration and listing submissions. I should note here as well that FDA receives thousands more from other authoring tools like Xforms and others. The bars in yellow show the spike in activity at the end of each year during the registration renewal period. What will the coming 3 months bring us? We could take a good guess, but the important message here is that we want our outreach and educational efforts to reach industry at the most effective time to make your jobs easier and to give us better quality data. Now, on to some of the new things affecting registration and listing. This is the first of two new marketing categories: emergency use authorization. I shouldn't really call this new because the code had been created some time ago, before the national health emergency. It just wasn't being used. FDA implemented its use in summer of 2021. Prior to that, all the drugs and vaccines being distributed under an EUA agreement were being listed as unapproved drug other. Now, this category is not available to everyone. Only after a company has been granted an emergency use authorization by the FDA can they list a product using this category. The second marketing category is for use in product reporting by registered outsourcing facilities. It's called Outsourcing Facility Compounded Human Drug Product Exempt from Approval Requirements. This new marketing category was recently implemented for use in the current product reporting period and beyond. Prior to that, these products were submitted as unapproved drug other. However, there was concern among some in the industry about being lumped in with other types of products that use the unapproved drug other category. FDA agreed and created the new designation. Further, and beginning this January 2022, after the end of the product reporting for this current period, FDA intends to begin including any product with this marketing category and which is assigned an NDC in the Ndc Directory. What else has changed since we last met? The over-the-counter user fee program was newly implemented this year. Does this affect your company? You can find out later today with Captain Matthew Brancasio's presentation. He's scheduled immediately after the lunch break. As a result of the CARES Act legislation, the FDA also recently launched a new administrative order processing for issuing, revising, and amending OTC monographs. You can read up all about it on the new webpage at the link on this slide, OTC Monographs at FDA. From the OTC Monograph at FDA main page, you'll find a link to this helpful page. It shows the current list of OTC Monograph final orders. It also shows the list of proposed and final orders and their status. The FDA is currently working on an implementation plan for incorporating the reforms into the drug listing process and submissions. So stay tuned for more information in the near future. The FDA has also been planning for and working on the future of the NDC. As many of you already know, FDA is facing a diminishing pool of available 5-digit labeler codes. When we exhaust that supply, under current regulation, FDA will begin assigning 6-digit labeler codes, which creates a second length to the NDC of 11 digits and 2 additional NDC configurations, 641 and 632. Consequently, and many of you may recall, FDA held a public meeting back in 2018 about the subject. We suggested 4 possible options, but allowed for any other suggestions as well. The 4 options were: A, maintaining the current practice and regulation without modification; B, same as option A, but transitioning on a specified date in the future to 6-digit labeler codes; C, adopting the 11-digit HIPAA format and transitioning to 12 digits later; or D, harmonizing the NDC by adopting a 12-digit 642 format. Although we had a few individual suggestions to use alternative codes for the NDC, there was overwhelming support for a single, unified 12-digit standard. Many of the comments were most concerned with the timing of such a change. Give plenty of time and notice for industry to plan and implement change, and some requested as much as 10 years. Give formal notification of when less than 10,000 labeler codes are left. Allow for a voluntary period to comply, and wait until after all the DSCSA implementation. The FDA is taking all of these comments into consideration, and we continue to keep stakeholder needs in mind as we plan for the future of the NDC. I'd like to close with a teaser of the various presentations today and what you can expect to see. We will first take you through the various web pages to help you help yourself when trying to get your questions answered. The rest of the morning will feature the heart of this workshop, the basics of drug registration and listing presented to you by our excellent and knowledgeable staff of experts. First, we'll have the registration basics, then the listing basics. After the morning break, we'll continue with the basics for assigning NDCs and the registration and product reporting for human drug compounding outsourcing facilities. After that, don't take too long of a lunch break because, as I mentioned earlier, we'll get you up to speed on AMUFA. Then, we have a number of shorter presentations on various subjects, such as listing kits, designating combination products, and common errors to avoid. There will then be an overview of our compliance program here in the Drug Registration and Listing Office. After the afternoon break, we'll show you what to do if you should get a deficiency letter from our office as a result of our compliance program. We will then discuss two specific compliance initiatives regarding U.S. agent data and our ongoing listing inactivation project. Backed by popular demand, we'll conduct a submission troubleshooting exercise to help you track down those pesky errors. We'll then finish the day with some general Q&A. Finally, this slide is as much a call to action as it is a thank you. The DRLS staff believes that, as the saying goes, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. We believe it's worth our time and yours to present all the information you will receive today so that you can give us the information we need on the first try and without error. So, thank you for listening to this presentation. Thank you for taking the time out of your day to attend the SBIA eDRLS 2021 workshop. And thank you for taking the time to ensure that your submissions are complete and accurate. We hope you enjoy the day.
Thank you for that great keynote address. My name is Ray Ford, and I work with CDER's Small Business and Industry Assistance, or SBIA, program, and I'll be your host for today. The first session will focus on the FDA website with a demonstration on what resources are available to you. It's our pleasure to welcome our speaker, Don Duggan, who's the team lead for the Help Desk Operations Team, also known as HOT. He's been with the FDA since 1995 and started his career in information systems, and from there moved on to supporting the eCTD and the Electronic Submissions Gateway, and for almost 9 years he's been working with the Drug Registration and Listing Branch. Please join me in welcoming Don Duggan.
Hello, my name is Don Duggan. I'm the team lead for the Help Desk Operation Team in the Drug Registration and Listing Branch in the Office of Compliance. Today I'm going to talk to you about our FDA website and some of the resources that are available to you. Now, I just want to say that I'll be using screenshots today, but all the links for all the web pages I talk about will be available in the reference section, and they will be spelled out there. They'll be written out. So if there's any question, you'll know how to get there. All right. First one I'm going to talk about today is the Ndc Directory. The National Drug Code Directory, or the Ndc Directory, is very important because this shows you if your drug is listed or not. Now, there are a few caveats. First of all, if it's just because it's in the directory, it doesn't indicate that we verified the information, all right? The labeler who supplies the SPL file is responsible for their own information. Also, the directory does not contain all listed drugs. It doesn't include animal drugs, blood products, drugs manufactured under contract, or drugs that are marketed solely as part of a kit or combination product. Also, because you have been assigned an NDC number, that doesn't in any way denote FDA approval of the product. Now, we're going to go to the NDC directory, and once we get there, we're going to find that there's a couple of options here, finished products or unfinished products. We're going to go with finished products. Unfinished products would be things like bulk products, things like that. Those are unfinished. Those are not going to consumers. Of course, the NDC directory is only for drugs that are going to consumers. So we're going to pick finished products here, and then we're going to select the type of search that we're going to do. We've got several choices. So some of the choices we have: proprietary name, application number, non-proprietary name, Ndc code, or labeler. I'm going to choose non-proprietary name, and I'm going to go with aspirin. And when I do that, I notice that I get back a table. And in that table, well, the first thing is I can look up there and I see if I want to go back to the search page and search again, I can. Other than that, I can go ahead and I can download this file as a CSV file or an Excel file. And if you look, you've got green dots there. Those green dots indicate that those products are current. A red dot would indicate a problem and something you might want to contact us about. If you look at the column headings, you've got proprietary name, new NDC, or rather NDC package code, strength, dosage forms, routes, application numbers, labeler names, etc., etc. It goes along all the way over to package description. And like I said, you can download this as an Excel file or a CSV file. Now, the next one we're going to talk about is the Drug Establishment's Current Registration Site, or DECRS, as we call it. And this you search for by name. When you do that, I put in ABC. And when I did that, I got back a table of 4 entries. Again, we could download it as a CSV file or an Excel file. And this table has the firm name, the FEI number or FDA Establishment Identifier, the DUNS number, the business operations, the address, and the expiration date. So all these firms, in fact all the firms, are going to want to make sure that they renew their registration before December 31st this year. Next, we're going to talk about how to find out information about 503B facilities. So registered outsourcing facilities. This page is dedicated to those types of facilities. It has a lot of information. It has, to the left, you'll notice on most of these web pages, or rather many of these web pages, there's a lot of links. So many of these pages have a lot of links. One link I really want to point out to you, though, is this outsourced facility product reporting information. And this is one we're going to go to right here. This is a link to reporting. And so when we report during different periods. As you can see here, you can select the reporting year, 2019-1, 2019-2. I've picked 2020-2, and I've picked aspirin because I'm looking up active ingredients. You could also put an establishment in here and then search by establishment. Once again, when you do this, you'll be able to download it by CSV file. In this case, there was only one outsource report of aspirin as an active ingredient. Next up, the points of contact web page. And this is very good because this one has points of contact for just about everything. All right, so you're going to go to that page, and what will you find? You will see the ESG account. If you have a problem with your account with the ESG, you can contact the ESG help desk. For structured product labeling for technical help or any kind of inquiries regarding X forms, you would contact the SPL coordinator. Establishment registration status. Well, after going to the drug establishment current registration site to see if it's current or not, if you still had questions, you would contact us at eDRLS. For drug listing status, well, of course, we would go to the Ndc Directory, but if, say, it was a contract manufactured item or there was some issue or some question that you had, if it's a human drug listing, you come to eDRLS. If it's a question about biologic listings, that would be CDER SPL. And for animal drugs, you would go to Ask CVM. Now, if you had a question about device registration or listing, you would go to RegList. For regulatory questions or general information, for human drugs, it's eDRLS. For animal drugs, it's Ask CVM. And for biologics, it's CDER SPL. SPL Resources. This is an excellent page. This has a massive number of links. It's got things like SPL documents, guidance documents, SPL terminology, SPL implementation guide, validation procedures. It's got the SPL schema and style sheet information. It's got GDUFA SPL step-by-step instructions and technical specifications. And it also says if you have questions regarding SPL submissions, they should go to the SPL coordinator. In eDRLS, we've got our own instructions page, and there we talk about the overall process, the different authoring tools that one can choose. So the FDA offers 2 different types of authoring tools free of charge. We talk about registration, labeler codes, and listing and how to do that. We talk about how to update SPL submissions. We also cover the blanket no change certification. And that is coming up. So these are things covered in this page. The FEI Search Portal is where you will go for all things FEI. We do not have really that much to do with FEIs. You have to go to the Search Portal, and you do need to create an account. Once you create an account, you can request an FEI. You can look and see if there's any issues with your address or anything like that. But for anything FEI, you're going to want to go to the Search Portal. In listing a drug product, one of the areas that causes, or is rather a great challenge, I guess, for firms is the strength conversion. So we have a strength conversion page which has a lot of information about strength conversion, how to do it. It also has a large table to tell you which types of units go with which types of products, and that's very helpful. So these are the resources. All the web pages that I spoke of are here, not only in a link, but also they are spelled out. So there's the Ndc Directory, Deckers, 503B, and information for outsourced facilities, as well as structured product labeling resources, the eDRLS instruction page, points of contact, the FEI Search Portal, and strength conversion. Thank you very much.
Thank you for the great presentation. Our speakers will join us again during our Q&A panels. If you have any questions, please enter those into the Q&A chat pod. Our next session is titled Drug Establishment, Registration, Deregistration, and Labeler Code Request. Our first speaker, Regie Samuel, has worked with the FDA and specifically drug registration and listing for over 8 years. For 3 years, he worked as an FDA contractor supporting eDRLS and CDER Direct systems on the software development team. Currently, and for the past 5 years, he holds the position of Technical Information Specialist on the DRLS staff. Our second speaker, Vikas Arora, is a pharmacist and has been working with the FDA for 8 years. He currently serves as a Health Science Project Manager in the Office of Program and Regulatory Operations in the Office of Compliance. Prior to his current position, he served as a Senior Regulatory Project Manager with the Office of Generic Drugs, managing the life cycle of ANDAs. And our third speaker, Puii Huber, is a Technical Information Specialist with the Drug Registration and Listing Branch. She's been working on drug registration and listing since 2006, first as a contractor and later as part of the eDRLS staff. As a contractor, she managed the data entry staff for registration and listing paper forms. Later, she was part of the development team that created and implemented the current CDER Direct application. Please join me in welcoming our first panel of speakers.
Good morning. My name is Regie Samuel, and I'm a Technical Information Specialist in the Drug Registration and Listing Branch. Today I'm going to talk to you about how to submit an establishment registration using CDER Direct. So who must register? Any establishment that manufactures, repackages, relabels, or salvages drugs for distribution in the U.S. should register as an establishment via an establishment registration. Now, certain exemptions are listed on the eDRLS website. That being mentioned, we did send out a poll question on LinkedIn, and that question was, who must register with FDA? A, contract manufacturers, B, private label distributors, C, neither, or D, both. Unfortunately, only 10% of people that answered this poll got that answer right. And the correct answer is contract manufacturers. Firms that are solely private label distributors that are not involved in the manufacturing process should not register as a drug establishment via an establishment registration. They do have listing requirements that are associated with a private label distributor, but since they don't perform any manufacturing activities such as repacking, relabeling, salvaging, or manufacturing, they should not register as a drug establishment via an establishment registration. I hope that is clear, and those that answered incorrectly in that poll, now you know what the correct answer is. When should firms register? We'll go over this very quickly. If you are a domestic establishment, it should be no later than 5 calendar days after beginning to do your processing of drugs. And for foreign establishments, it should be prior to importing or offering for import drugs into the United States. So let's get into the meat of what we actually want to talk about today, which is how to submit an establishment registration using CDER Direct. So let's head into the live demo right now. So the first thing I'm going to want to do is head over to the CDER Direct website, and after I've created my account and confirmed my CDER Direct account, I'm going to enter my username, my password, click on the checkbox next to I understand, and log in. Now, once I do, I'm going to come to the CDER Direct landing page for my account. And if this is your first time coming into CDER Direct, you won't have any submissions listed here because you haven't created one before. The reason I have one in here is because I've pre-made one so that we can work through our presentation a little quicker and you're not watching me type or most likely mistype things into the form. So what you would do is you'd have a blank screen on this side, but over here, in order to create your initial establishment registration, is you'd click on Establishment Registration, click on Create New/Upload File, click on the first radio button to create a new registration using a blank form, and continue. Now once you do, you'll come to a screen that is mostly blank that you'll need to fill in. The first thing that you're going to want to do is on document type, select establishment registration because that's what we want to do. We want to register our establishment. And then the next 4 fields, the set ID, root ID, version number, and effective date, will already be pre-filled for you. So you don't need to do anything with those fields. The first one you'll need to actually enter information into is for registrant name. Now, some people may be wondering, well, I don't know exactly what CDER Direct wants me to enter for registrant name. Well, what I could do is any field in CDER Direct that has a dotted underline beneath it, you can click on that field name and it'll magically bring up help text for you. And that help text is what's going to tell you what this field is looking for. And in this case, it says the registrant is the official contact for establishment registrations. Facility contacts should be entered under establishments. Okay, so the official contact for the establishment registrations is my company, which is Wonder Pharma. All right, and my registrant DUNS for my company is 987654321. And the contact for the establishment is going to be me. My contact for the registrant, I'm sorry, is going to be me. And so I'd enter the name of the contact, email, phone, and the registrant contact address over here. Now, that's just for the registrant. Now you need to actually provide information about the establishment you want to register. And the way to do that is you'll click here on the red button that says Add Establishment. And here's where you'll start typing in information regarding your particular establishment. In this case, my establishment and the registrant are going to be the same. It's Wonder Pharma, all right? And our DUNS number is 987654321. And to save us time, I'm going to go now to the already pre-filled establishment registration so we can move along a little more quickly. As you can see, there are a lot of blanks I need to fill in. So let's head over there and let's just pretend I quickly typed everything. And as I'm working on my establishment registration for Wonder Pharma, I've typed in all the information. And so here it is. And I've typed in the DUNS number, and now I need to enter the address information. Now, this is really key, and one thing I need to point out. You have to ensure that the establishment address that you provide exactly matches the address information in your Dun & Bradstreet record that's associated with your DUNS number. Because the establishment registration, once you submit it, goes through a validation process to ensure that that is the case. So if you've recently changed your address or you've updated it with, you've moved to a different location, whatever it may be, and now you're entering that information here on CDER Direct, but you haven't updated it with Dun & Bradstreet, you're going to want to stop the process right there, head over to the Dun & Bradstreet website or contact them, and make sure that you update your address with Dun & Bradstreet first before you try to submit your establishment registration. We get a lot of questions of folks saying, well, I don't know why my establishment registration is not passing the validation. And it's because they haven't updated the information with Dun & Bradstreet and allowed it to propagate through the system. So make sure you've done that. The second thing you want to point out is, I know when you see blanks in a government form, you feel like, well, I need to enter in something there because it's blank right now, and you want to move the process along. But for establishment FEI, if this is the first time you're registering your establishment, you're not going to have one. After you submit your establishment registration, it then kicks off the process for an FEI to be assigned to your firm. And that facility establishment identifier will be assigned to you by the district office. And that process can take several weeks to complete. So you're going to want to wait to receive that FEI number. And when you do receive that FEI number, then you'll be able to add it into your establishment registration at that time and submit it back to us. And I'll talk about that in our next module. So don't worry if this is blank, you won't have an FEI number assigned to you at this time. After that, you're going to give us the establishment contact information. This is the contact at the establishment. Make sure that this information is up to date and correct. If it's the same exact information as the registrant contact details and address, you can just click on this checkbox here, and it'll bring over that information so you don't need to add it in yourself. It'll automatically populate it for you. And this contact address does not need to be the same as the Dun & Bradstreet address associated with this DUNS number. It can be a different contact address if it needs to be. The one that needs to be the same as Dun & Bradstreet is the establishment address. Please do keep that in mind. Finally, we come down here to the business operations. This is where you can add the business operations that are taking place at this particular establishment. You're going to give the business operation and the qualifier. If you need to add a business operation, you would click on the blue plus sign here, select the one that applies to your particular firm. I'm a pack facility as well, and I pack, let's say, human over-the-counter drug products produced under a monograph. If I made a mistake and I need to remove something I added in, I just got to click on the red X and it removes it. And once you've done that and you've completed that process, you would then click on Save Establishment. Now remember, you can add multiple establishments to one establishment registration. If you have multiple facilities around the country or around the world and you want to register them all on the same establishment registration, so you only have one place to go, you can do that. You would just have to click on Add Establishment again, and then it'll add a new establishment, ask you about information for it. And for the sake of time, I've already added a second establishment here, Wonder Pharma 2. And as you can see, I've entered the information for this particular establishment of mine that I have in Australia. The other one was in the United States. This one's in Australia. And because this one's in Australia, it's also going to ask me to provide US agent information. Fortunately, I have a wonderful agent, and this agent has to be located in the United States. That DUNS number you enter should be one that's associated with the United States address. And then I'll have to also provide the importers that I need to, that will be importing the product into the United States. I can add multiple importers by clicking on the plus sign if I make a mistake, like always, or I need to remove one I had before, I can just click on the red X to remove it. And then finally, like you did before, enter in the business operations that are taking place at this particular establishment. And once you're done, just click on Save Establishment. Make sure everything looks good and you've entered it properly, and then that's when you'll click on this final button that says Submit SPL. And once you do that, it's going to take you to back to the home screen here, and it'll say Awaiting Acceptance. That means that it's going through the validation process to make sure that the establishment registration that was submitted passes the validation procedures we have in place. And if it does, you will get a response of the status will be changed to submission accepted. If there was an error, such as you enter the address incorrectly and it doesn't match Dun & Bradstreet, it'll come back and say submission failed. And if it says submission failed, don't worry, you'll just have to go back into a submission, correct the error, and click Submit SPL again. Once the submission comes back as submission accepted, then that means it has come into our system and you're good to go. So once that registration is submission accepted, within 1 to 2 business days, your firm name and information will appear on the drug establishment current registration site. That's the way to confirm that your establishment is registered as a drug establishment with the FDA. The FDA does not provide any registration certificates to firms. The way you can confirm or provide to a client whether your firm is registered is to go to the drug establishment current registration site. There have been agents that have provided these kinds of certificates that you see on the screen right now, but they are not from the FDA, and they are not recognized as from the FDA. They are simply a certificate given by an agent to a firm. For us to know that your firm is registered, you should just go to the drug establishment current registration site. Now let's talk about establishment registration renewal. You've done your registration for the first time, and now you want to renew your registration during our October 1st through December 31st registration renewal period. Questions. So when do you update your registration? A registration renewal should be submitted between October 1 and December 31st of every year. And expedited updates should be provided within 30 days of a change. Those expedited updates are things such as closing or selling establishment, which would require a deregistration. And Vikas will cover that in our next session. changing the establishment's name or physical address, or changing the name, mailing address, telephone number, or email address of the official contact or the U.S. agent. Those kinds of changes, don't wait till October 1 and December 31st. Go ahead and do that within 30 days of such a change. So what are the document types we have established for establishment renewal? We have establishment registration and the no change notification. The no change notification can only be submitted and is only accessible between October 1 and December 31. It is not available outside of those dates. So let's go ahead and start on our live demo in CDER Direct and see how we can quickly and easily submit that registration renewal. You do not have to fret, you do not have to be anxious or nervous, because you can get it done with it in just a few clicks when using CDER Direct. Let's see how we can do that. Now, in order to re-register your establishment, and it's between October 1st and December 31st, all you'll need to do is log into your CDER Direct account. You want to click on Establishment Registration. And once you do, you want to find the most recently submitted Establishment Registration SPL for the firm you want to re-register. Click on Submission Accepted for that firm. And then once you do that, just simply click on Create New Version. Now, once you do that, the system automatically maintains the same set ID, generates a new root ID, increases the version number by 1, and changes the effective date. So you don't need to do anything here at the top. What you'll do is just verify that the information in your form is correct. I can see I just need to enter a postal code here. And I always tell firms, go ahead and check your establishment information, make sure the U.S. agent information that you've entered in is correct and up to date. If you have to update your business operations, go ahead and do that at this time as well. And then you're just going to go back and click on Submit SPL, and you're done. Literally takes a few seconds. If you want to do the other option of submitting a no change notification, you can click on No Change Notification, basically saying everything that I submitted before is exactly the same as it was in the previous year. I'm just going to submit a no change notification and submit the SPL. My suggestion to all firms is to just keep it as an establishment registration so that you can review the data, which is a good thing to do. Make sure it's correct. Make sure your contact information is correct. And not changing anything after looking at it is fine, and you can just click Submit SPL. And once you do that, it'll go through the validation process, and once it returns back as submission accepted, your firm is re-registered. And remember, this same process can be used at any time during the year to update your establishment registration. You would just come in, click on Submission Accepted, click on Create New Version, update the information you need, such as the contact information or the business operations that are taking place at the establishment, and then click Submit. That can be done at any time during the year that you need to have that completed. Thank you for registering and re-registering your drug establishment, and I hope today you found that you can use CDER Direct to get it done in no time. Thank you for sticking with me till the end.
I'd like to thank my colleague for their presentation. My name is Vikas Arora, and I work with the Office of Program and Regulatory Operations within the Office of Compliance with the Drug Registration and Listing team. Next, I'm going to briefly speak about establishment deregistration and then provide a demonstration in the CDER Direct system. Here's an overview of what we'll talk about for this portion of the presentation. We will briefly speak about the importance of deregistration, when to deregister, deregistration document types that are used, what to do after deregistration, and again, we'll provide a demonstration of the CDER Direct system to visually display the different situations of deregistration and how to go about it. We will then end with a challenge question that we will review together. Why is deregistration important? We want to preserve the integrity and accuracy of the system when establishments are no longer manufacturing drugs in order to not waste valuable resources. Incorrect information in the database can affect many programs that rely upon it to function. Some of these programs include internal as well as external programs. Internal include things such as inspection planning and monitoring drug shortages. External include reimbursement as well as monitoring the supply chain. In addition, this can alert manufacturing, relabeling, repackaging, and other partners when there are changes such as closures, sale of an establishment, or due to other situations such as mergers. So when do we deregister? We previously mentioned that the annual registration renewal period occurs from October to December every year. But there are certain situations that warrant expedited updates, as stated in 21 CFR 207.29, which states that expedited updates must be provided within 30 calendar days of a change. One of these specific changes lists the closing or selling of an establishment and when an establishment is no longer manufacturing drug products for commercial distribution in the U.S. This is why deregistering properly and in a well-timed manner is important. What are the SBL documents to deregister establishments? There are two different kinds. There's the Establishment Deregistration SPL, and there's the Out of Business Notification SPL. And I will show both of these options in the upcoming demonstration in the CDER Direct system. The first one is the Establishment Deregistration SPL. As mentioned before, when a firm is no longer manufacturing drug products for commercial distribution in the U.S., we would want to deregister using this SPL. They may opt to continue to manufacture other non-drug related products, and if so, they would need to check with the registration requirements with the other parts of the FDA. The second SPL is called the Out of Business Notification SPL, and just like its name, when a firm or establishment is no longer in business, we would use the Out of Business SPL. When there are multiple establishments on one registration SPL, we would submit an Establishment Deregistration or Out of Business Notification SPL to deregister all of the establishments in the SPL. To deregister one or any less than all of the establishments in the SPL, do not submit an Establishment Deregistration or Out of Business Notification. You would drop the deregistered establishment in a new version of the SPL. Again, I will go over these options in the upcoming demonstration. What to do after deregistration? Drug listing updates must also be updated accordingly. All affected listing SPLs by an establishment deregistration must also be revised. If no longer manufacturing the drug, then it needs to be delisted properly. If there's still product in commercial distribution left and you plan on delisting, please make sure to enter a future end marketing date to allow for the existing supply to be exhausted. If the drug is to remain on the market but is using a new manufacturing establishment, this must also be updated. In addition to drug listing updates, labeler code updates must also be made. You must check to see if the labeler code SPL needs to be updated depending on the change that is made. If an establishment is no longer manufacturing drugs or goes out of business, it is best that the labeler code is inactivated to avoid any adverse consequences. Now I will go into a demonstration on how to use each SPL in the CDER Direct system to deregister all establishments, as well as how to deregister any less than all the establishments in the SPL. Earlier, we talked about how to log into the CDER Direct system as an initial step. So once you've logged into your CDER Direct account, putting in your username and password, you're going to click on Establishment Registration here on the left side. And this pulls up all the SPLs, establishment SPLs associated with the account. So then we're going to click on Submission Accepted associated with the establishment registration that contains the establishments that you would like to deregister. So in this case, I'm going to click on this one. What pulls up here is you can see the header details, the registrant details containing the specific information, contact information, and address, as well as the establishments associated with this SPL. What we're going to do first is click on Create New Version, since we are editing this SPL to deregister the facilities. What this is going to do is this is going to keep the set ID the same. It's going to generate a new root ID. It's going to increase the version number by 1, and it's going to set the effective date as of today. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at the document types here. Here, when you click the document type, you see establishment registration, establishment deregistration, and out of business notification. Previously, we talked about establishment registration, and in this case, we can pick the establishment deregistration SPL or the out of business notification SPL. Both of these SPLs will deregister all of the establishments associated with your SPL. In a few minutes, I'm going to cover how to deregister specific establishments, but not all the establishments associated with the SPL. So in this case, we're going to click on Establishment Deregistration SPL. As you can see, all other information disappears besides for the header details. Then what we're going to do next is click on Submit SPL. The submission will now undergo the technical validation process indicated by awaiting acceptance, as you see here. This could take about 10 to 15 minutes. Once it does pass validation, this will be indicated by the submission accepted status that will appear here, as you see in the previous SPLs. And then that's it. Your establishment or establishments are now properly deregistered. If you have an establishment registration SPL that contains many establishments, but you only want to deregister one of them or any less than all of them, you would do the following. Again, as in before, you would register into your CDER Direct account, and then you would click on Establishment Registration. Then you're going to click on Submission Accepted of the establishment you want to deregister out of the SPL. In this case, I'm going to click on this one. Here again, you see the header details, the registrant details, and the establishments associated with the SPL. This time, we are not going to click on the document type as we did before. We are going to, initially, we're going to create new version since we're updating the SPL. Again, this keeps the set ID the same, generates a new root ID, generates the next version number, and sets the effective date as of today. But in this case, we're going to go scroll to the bottom and look at the establishments associated with the SPL. Then we're going to click on the Edit tool next to the facility we want to deregister. So I'm going to click on this Edit tool for the TPN facility. This goes into the establishment details and contact details of the establishment. What we're going to do next is click on Delete Establishment. You're then going to receive a pop-up asking, confirming if you would like to delete the establishment. You're going to click on OK. If there are multiple establishments that you want to deregister on this establishment registration, you would repeat the process of clicking the Edit tool next to the establishment that you want to deregister and then click on Delete Establishment. Now what we're going to do is we're going to click on Submit SPL after we've made our change. Once again, the submission will undergo the technical validation process. Once it passes validation, that's it. Now your establishment is properly deregistered while the other establishment is deregistered. As you can see here, it says awaiting acceptance, and when that has passed validation, it will say submission accepted. We will now go over a challenge question. A manufacturing establishment which was manufacturing hand sanitizers in response to the pandemic stops production. Within how many days should it deregister with FDA? A, same day. B, 14 days. C, 30 days. And D, between October and December. And the answer is C, 30 days. In summary, deregister in a timely manner. It's a simple and quick process. It alerts the agency as well as business partners due to the change in business status due to the removal of the establishment. Make sure to report all required updates to the FDA. Make sure to use the correct SPL depending on your situation. Make sure to update your drug listing accordingly due to the change in status due to the deregistration of the establishment or establishments. And lastly, make sure to update the labeler SPL accordingly or inactivate the labeler code if the company is no longer planning on producing drugs for U.S. distribution. Thank you for your time, and now we'll pass the presentation on to the next speaker.
Hello, my name is Puii Huber, and in this part of the presentation, we will be discussing labeler code requests. This presentation is divided into two parts. The first part will be about the who, when, and how of the labeler code process, when to update a labeler code information, some reasons why labeler codes are rejected, and then we will log into CDER Direct application for a live demo of how to submit and complete a request. The second part of the presentation will be centered around the labeler code inactivation process. We will go over both the FDA and industry inactivation process, and we will log into CDER Direct again for another live demo of how to inactivate or reactivate a labeler code. Many of you have seen this slide, so this is a quick review of the Ndc Code. Each drug product listed is assigned a unique 10-digit 3-segment number. This number is known as the Ndc, and it identifies the labeler, product, and trade package size. The first segment highlighted here is the labeler code, and this is assigned by the FDA. A labeler is any firm that manufactures, including repackers or relabelers, or a company that distributes the product, the drug, under its own name. The second segment, the product code, identifies a specific strength or dosage form and formulation. And the third segment, the package code, identifies package sizes and types. Both the product and package codes highlighted in blue are assigned by the firm, and the code assigned, the first segment, is assigned by the FDA. The purpose of requesting a labeler code is to list drugs, prescription or OTC, that are manufactured or distributed in the U.S. 207.33 provides information on who must obtain a labeler code and how it is assigned and updated. A labeler code request must be submitted when first introducing a product into commercial distribution, which is 5 days within going into the market. So it is important that you submit, request, and complete your labeler code request prior to drug listing. If you do not have to list any drugs with FDA, you should not apply for a labeler code. One question that we often get is for drug sponsors or application holders. If you are not involved in any manufacturing, processing, or marketing of the drug, you are not required to register or list, so you should not apply for a labeler code. Labeler codes that are not used by listing a drug product are automatically inactivated after 24 months. Any labeler code information, including the physical address, email, and contact information, must be updated within 30 calendar days after any change. This is extremely important since the FDA uses the contact information in the labeler code to communicate any issues regarding listing. So, for example, if you have a listing deficiency that needs to be updated, the contact information in the labeler code will be used for any communication. So within the past couple of weeks, if you did not receive the annual registration reminder, you probably have a bad email address. So treat this as an annual update, even though it's not a requirement, since this is an important way for us to communicate to you. Check your labeler information. If you send us an email and say, this labeler contact has changed, there's nothing we can do about it, since FDA does not update any of companies' SPL record. You have to go in and update that contact information. Here are some of the reasons why a labeler code is rejected. If you are not required to list a drug, as mentioned earlier, your labeler code will be rejected. If you already have a labeler code assigned to your company, it will most likely get rejected. We only issue one labeler code per company, and generally only assign more than one if the company has exhausted or run out of all possible NDC numbers associated with that labeler code. If your labeler code was inactivated, it will be rejected, since inactivated labeler codes can be reactivated. We will go over that in a few minutes. Your information must match DNB database. So before you submit a request, make sure that the company name and address is correct in DNB database. So if you're a veterinarian drug manufacturer or distributor, your labeler code will be rejected. If you are a veterinarian drug manufacturer, you need to submit an NDC labeler code request -animal drug. There are two labeler code document types. The first one is NDC NREG labeler code request. This document type is used for requesting a labeler code or completing the labeler code process, reactivating a labeler code, and also updating a labeler contact. This is the one you will most likely use. The second one is NDC labeler code inactivation. This document type is used to inactivate a labeler code due to a business change, out of business, or due to company merger and acquisitions. We will now go over the labeler code request process and completing or updating a labeler code live. To access CDER Direct, you can go on to this link provided here, direct.fda.gov. This is the CDER Direct login page. If you have an account, if you don't have an account, you can create one. Start by creating an account here. Or if you already have an account, enter your username and password and click on login. So CDER Direct homepage as a default shows all submissions that you have sent or saved as a draft. You have some of the basic data elements here, such as the set ID status here, root ID, and submission ID, version, the document type that you have submitted, last modified user if there are multiple users, and the last modified date. So to create a labeler code request under submissions, we will click on NDC and labeler code requests. So the page here shows you all the labeler code requests that I have submitted or sent, drafted in the past. And since we are creating a new request, new code, we're going to click on Create New Upload File. So once you click on that, you're going to see a pop-up screen to let you know that it is preferable to wait until you have a product to list. It also provides you with the processing time, which is 21 business days, and information on how to reactivate an inactivated code. So since we are creating a new request, we'll click on OK. You have two options here, either to create a new labeler code request with a blank form, or if you've used a different application and you have the SPL saved to your desktop, you can import an existing one. So let's create a new form request. Continue. Under header details, you have the option to select the document type. As I mentioned earlier, you have two options. One is to request a labeler code, and the one is to inactivate your labeler code. Let's select on NDC labeler code request. The next field is the set ID. The set ID is what the FDA uses to link submissions for any SPL over time. And so if you're making any update and this was submitted, you're going to have to use the same set ID. Root ID, also known as the document ID, is unique for every submission, and the version number will default to 1 since this is a new form. And we're going to leave the header details the way it is. And when you're using CDER Direct, you will most likely always leave the header details alone. Next, we're going to enter the labeler details. Under labeler details, enter the labeler name, the DUNS number, and if you're requesting a labeler code, make sure that the field here, the labeler code field, is blank. If you have any questions about any of the fields and you are not sure what to enter, you can just click on it and you will have some helpful hints for filling out the form. Any field with an asterisk indicates that it's a required field. So once you enter that, the contact information and the contact address, you have the option to enter the additional labeler details. The additional labeler details, as you can see here, is optional. However, we suggest that you enter all of this information to expedite the process of your request. So if you opt not to complete this information, an email will be sent to the contact address that you've provided to verify the physical address, DUNS, and the business operations. So if the address of the firm requesting the labeler code is different, at a different location, you can enter that information here, or if it is the same, you can just click on the option, the checkbox here, and the same information will be populated here without having to type again. Now, if the labeler contact or the company is out of the United States, you can select the country and you will have the option to enter the US agent. And at this point, once you enter the business operation, the qualifier, you also have the option to select multiple business operations. And if you think you are ready, this is where you will go ahead and submit the SPL. You can save it as a draft or save and validate first to check and make sure that the submission is ready. So if you are ready to submit, you will just click on Submit SPL. And that gives me a validation. So let's check the validation that we have. Enter contact phone. So this is, again, I missed this, and you're going to have to enter the phone number. Make sure that the phone number is in the right format. And once you enter that, you can select again, Submit SPL. So in this submission screen, you notice that the submission says awaiting acceptance in the status field. So an email will be sent to the contact email of the account indicating the status change. So if there are any validation errors, such as this example here, shown here, the status will say validation failed, submission failed. So if it successfully passes, the screen will be updated and the status will show submission accepted, as in this example. Once a labeler code is assigned to your company, FDA will send an email to the point of contact on the labeler code request with the assigned number. Once you have this assigned number, you are required to confirm the labeler code. Unless you confirm this labeler code, you are not going to be able to list the product with the assigned number. So our next step here is to log back into CDER Direct and confirm the assignment. To complete the final step of the labeler code assignment process, log back into your CDER Direct account, and once you're in, open the previously submitted and accepted labeler code request. Next, click on Create New Version. And once you click on that, you can go to the field for labeler code and enter the labeler code that has been assigned to your company. And if there are any changes, you can also enter that information here. So if you want to change the contact email, if, for example, it has changed, you can update that or any other information. And if you're ready, you can submit the SPL. We will now go over both the FDA and industry inactivation process. So first, let's go over the process of FDA-initiated labeler code inactivation. Before a labeler code is inactivated by the FDA, an email is sent to the point of contact associated with the labeler code assignment to let the firm know that in 30 days, the labeler code will be inactivated unless the company lists a product or provide a valid reason. So this is a sample of what the verification email looks like. As I mentioned earlier, the contact information provided in the labeler code request is used for official communication regarding listing or labeler code such as this letter. So please make every effort to ensure that the labeler information is up to date. In the verification email response that we just saw, we ask that you respond within 30 days. And if you no longer manufacture or distribute, you should state that in your response. Or if you believe that you need an active labeler code, you should also provide the reason. So for example, if you have a product with a pending NDA or ANDA, you can provide that information in your response, and the eDRLS staff will review the response that has been provided. If we do not receive a response to the verification email, then the labeler code will be inactivated. Once the labeler code is inactivated, the labeler will receive an email like this one to notify the firm that the FDA has inactivated the labeler code. In the email, we also provide information on how to reactivate a labeler code. It is important to know that only the FDA is able to reactivate an FDA-initiated labeler code inactivation. To reactivate a labeler code, instead of requesting a new labeler code request, send an email to eDRLS@fda.hhs.gov. This happens quite often, so please note, do not submit a new labeler code request if your labeler code was inactivated. Email us at the email address provided here with the following information: the product name, active ingredient, labeling, strength, anticipated start marketing date, and intended NDC for each drug. There are a number of reasons why industry-initiated labeler code inactivation occurs, such as a company going out of business, or if there's a change in business, if a merger or acquisition occurs, or the pending application did not get approved by FDA. So these are all situations where a company would submit a labeler code inactivation. So let's log back into our CDER Direct account and learn how to inactivate or reactivate a labeler code. To inactivate a labeler code, once you log back into your CDER Direct account, make sure you open the previously submitted and accepted labeler code request. So it has to be the labeler code request that you used to complete your labeler code process or make any changes or update to your labeler code, since the labeler code is tied to the set ID. So let's open this accepted labeler code request. Next, click on Create New Version. And change the document type to NDC Labeler Code Inactivation. And once you do that, your SPL is successfully cloned, so you can submit your SPL, and we're done. Just a reminder that only FDA is able to reactivate an FDA-initiated labeler code inactivation. So to reactivate a labeler code that is inactivated by your company, we're going to click on the previously accepted submission, which is a document type, NDC and labeler code request. So this is the labeler code request that we used for completing the labeler code process and updating any contact information. Click on Create New Version. And once you're ready, you can submit SPL, and this will reactivate a labeler code that was inactivated by your company. In closing, here's a summary of what we discussed. Labeler codes that are not used by listing a product are automatically inactivated after 24 months. So make sure to only apply for a labeler code when you're ready to list a product, so you can eliminate the process of having to go through the entire steps that we discussed of reactivation and inactivation. Address, contact, or any change to a labeler code must be updated within 30 calendar days. To make any changes to a labeler code, make sure you use the original set ID. And lastly, to reactivate a labeler code inactivated by the FDA, email us at eDRLS@fda.hhs.gov. And that brings us to the end. If you have any questions, email us. Thank you.